Hey everybody, welcome to another pre-symposium panel. I'm so excited to dive in here today. Essentially, a pre-symposium panel is a gathering of leaders who are going to be at our upcoming Executive Symposium in Dallas on June 12th to cover the topic, getting team buy-in to business transformation. And so if you're a leader watching this and you're thinking to yourself, okay, these are three really great leaders here on this panel today. I'd love to meet them. I'd love to connect with them, or these topics are really interesting to me. You should RSVP and come to the event. We've got three great leaders here with us today. We've got Rohit, we got Stephanie, and we've got Tiffany. Rohit, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure, Garrett. My name is Rohit Sinha. I am based out of Dallas, Texas, and I work for a software services company as VP of Sales. And I have like over 2 decades of experience. I was into like different, different areas, including delivery, account management. From last 10 years, I've been into sales. So that's all about me. Thank you.
Very nice. Stephanie, how about you?
I'm Stephanie Toliver. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Weitzman. We're a full-service retail real estate company based in Dallas. We have offices in San Antonio, Houston, and Austin as well. And so we do things like grocery-anchored shopping centers and neighborhood strip centers.
Very nice. And Tiffany, how about you?
Good morning. I'm Tiffany Williams-Payne, bringing greetings also from Dallas, Texas. I'm an HR professional who has spent over a decade leading TA teams globally at companies like Bain and Company, Depository Trust Clearing Corporation, and American Airlines. I've been a part of many transformations and feel this is a timely discussion. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to join in on the conversation.
Absolutely. And I'm Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. At Ambition in Motion, our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they're there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. And we believe that starts with leaders because leaders create the experiences employees have while at work. And so we create technologies and communities to empower leaders to be their best selves for their teams. And one of the ways that we build community is by having executive symposiums and bringing leaders together to share challenges and topics that they are working through, testing out ideas, working through challenges, all that sort of fun stuff. So let's dive in. Topic is getting team buy-in to business transformation. At our pre-symposium panel last week, one of our panelists brought up this concept that buy-in is built and not bought. And I
Mhm.
just see a lot of merger and acquisition activity going on today. And that is the true definition of buying, trying to get buy-in to getting people to transform to some form of new way of doing business. And so I guess maybe what I'd love to kick off this panel with is talking a little bit about mergers and acquisitions. I love to learn, what have you found to be effective when it comes to, whether it be if you've been through a merger or acquisition, what have you found to be effective with either integrating into a team that acquired you or integrating a team that you've acquired into your team? What did you find effective? What did you find to be, maybe face plants? I like mistakes. No one wants to read the Bill Gates How He Became a Billionaire by Trying Hard book. They want to know, where did you hit the face plant? Where did you succeed? What were the things that you found to be successful? Because I do think this concept of buying being built and not bought is really interesting to me. And by the way, if you disagree with that concept, I want to hear about it too. So who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll jump in. To be honest, I've never been through a formal merger or an acquisition, but I think a big piece of the puzzle is making sure you understand the shared values. So your companies are going to have different operating systems, different processes, but if you can find shared values among the different teams, then I think you can build upon that and use that as your base to start getting buy-in for certain new initiatives or the merger itself.
Very
Yeah, I
nice.
agree with the aspect of shared values because, obviously most companies, they operate differently, right? And so when you're merging those two organizations together, there may be, different benefits that people are accustomed to, different titles or different levels of roles. And once you cut through the nitty-gritty of all those things, you want to know what's important to those employees or those people who are staying on board or those people who are, going to the other company that may be leading. And so making sure that, everyone is on one accord around those concerns, which are very important to most employees when you think about benefits, pay, and level of their role and what their responsibilities will be. I think those are things that are top of mind. And then we work into, kind of what the culture would be and how will we build the culture of the organization.
Yep. I agree with that, like what both of you said. And I have been into like merger acquisition, I would say like last couple of years, like there were two. And I think the one thing that really helps is, communicate like a compelling why we are doing it to your not just to your management, but to the whole team, and how it fits well with your goals, with your team goals, and with the organization goal. So that really helps, and be transparent, involve team early on as far as possible, and so that there are no surprises and everyone say okay, they are up to, like, they are onboarded already and they like the idea. So once you have that, I mean, that decision is there and the team buy-in is there, it's really easy to have those like mergers and acquisitions with the companies. So that's what my take is.
This is interesting, and I like it. I like where we're talking about this concept of shared values. It's really interesting to me. But, playing my devil's advocate and putting that hat on, part of me wonders who's shared values and how's it defined? Is it defined by the CEO? And does that CEO have an accurate idea as to what's going on in terms of the shared values? Or is it determined by the people? But are the people too scared to speak up about maybe what shared values aren't fully shared because they're not high enough rank in the organization? So when we talk about shared values, whose shared values are we referring to, and how are those determined? Was it like determined in a C-suite meeting where, five people at a round table said, here are our core values, and this is what their core values are? Would the vast majority of the company agree? I don't know. Sometimes it's not always accurate. You see a lot of corporate jargon on walls, and there's a lot of paint that's still wet in terms of the new corporate jargon. That's innovation, amplification, all the things. So, anyways, I'd be curious to know, how are you defining shared values, and how do you really get to the core of that? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. Well, let me just say this in my experience, and I'll caveat this with in some organizations that I've been, had the privilege of being a part of, when the topic of, transformations or mergers and acquisitions and what that sounds like or feels like appears, I've noticed that, from from what you were just saying, more senior level folks, planning and prepping, they're creating their strategy decks and their top down announcements, foregoing the involvement of the people whom this change or transformation or shared value or merger and acquisition will affect. Then they're shocked when there's pushback or hesitancy in those times. So I've learned early on that, getting buy-in often happens, when we bring those people in who this change or merger or what have you will affect, and having them be a part of that change and having them feel comfortable to voice their opinions around, what are the things that are important to them, and taking a survey of what those things are and, coming up with a, concise, conducive plan that helps everyone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll just say, I mean, if you're going to go through a merger, the senior leaders are doing it for a reason. So there's specific business reasons that they're gonna go through that brain damage of that big transaction. I think the way you frame it, I think your words are very, very important. So if you frame it as we're going through this merger so that we can change this and reduce expenses by 15%, that's not going to resonate well with anybody. But if you frame it as, we're doing this so we can serve our customers better, or you tie it back to the value that most people could identify with, then you're gonna speak to them in a way that resonates better than the hard business facts. And they both can be they can coexist. You're just framing it differently.
Mhm.
Right, makes sense. And my point is like the way it works is like when we do this kind of a change, it's a big change for the organization, especially for the employees. So everyone has a question like, what is in for me? So what it is going to give me the benefit or whatever, right? So it should be a shared value across the team. It should not just be the C-suite, and it is like both your all the team members and how it fits well at an organization level, so that you'll have a good team buy-in. And many times, and another thing is like it's a journey. So it won't be okay, this is a shared value and the merger happens and that's it. It is a journey. You need to make sure what shared values are at a higher level, at a senior level, that we are still consistent with those values, so that you'll have a team buy-in and so that a team is fully empowered, and it's a kind of a seamless process. So that's what my understanding is, that it really works well when everyone is on the same page.
I like it. So, Stephanie and Rohit, you talk about this concept of the words you're using and this what's in it for me. How far do you go? Do you mind giving an example? Like, Stephanie, you give the example of like, hey, it's going to help reduce our cost by 15%. That's not going to resonate with employees. But, if you say, hey, it's going to help our customer experience because it's going to make it better, as opposed to, them having to, let's say you're a bank, input your social security number and your bank number and then press the pound sign, only to like have a customer service rep pick up the phone and be like, all right, what's your social security number or account number, because we don't know anything of what's going on. They're like, why did you have me sit through 5 minutes of automated call things to go through this, to ultimately have to repeat this exact same information to you over the phone in person? I just sat on hold for a while going through this. The point I guess I'm getting to within all this scenario is, do you go to the next level of saying, hey, if we are more efficient for our customers, that means our customers are going to be happier when they're interacting with you, let's say a customer service representative. And when they're happier interacting with you, you're going to get a lot fewer pissed off customers screaming at you and berating you for all these things, which should make your work more enjoyable here at our organization, because now our customer experience is better and your life is better and all these sorts of things. Like, do you take it to the next level of like truly what's in it for them? Because maybe an employee might be like, customer experience, schmushmerience, it doesn't really matter to me, but like, how does this impact my satisfaction with the work I'm doing, or my compensation, or my benefits, or like, I don't know. Do you take it to the next level, or do you think that's not as pertinent?
I think it's important to try. It's not always successful, to be honest. I mean, it's hard if you're talking to your accounting team or your IT team. It's hard because they're not dealing with the customer. So how do you tie in all those different departments that don't have, direct contact and can feel and see the change that's happening? But you have to find a way to make that connection. You know, the easier the team can read the financial reports, the less time they have to spend on it. Tie it into something where collectively as a team we are trying to move in a certain direction. And you know, vision is a hard thing to describe, and it's a hard thing to always implement. But if you can have a North Star and say, this is our goal, this is where we're trying to head as a team, everybody has a part in it. Let's you know and kind of define kind of what those parts are if you can. Then I think it creates this common goal that everybody can work toward.
Right, right. And the other thing is, like, if the one thing that helps is like if there's a merger or the acquisition going on, right? You make sure that you have a confidence of your team. Let them know, okay, this is a good, stable environment, and there will be opportunities for you to grow. And not just that, but it will also open up new doors to you, right? Being a salesperson, if I have more capabilities, more skills, right? So that way you can tell your different team members, right? In whatever role that they are. Because I am into the tech role, I'm like, my teams are working on, the different software projects and everything. So having more capabilities, more opening of doors really excite you. And the only thing is that you need to make sure that the message is clear. It is, compelling, as I said earlier, so that team you get a buy-in from the team, because buy-in is very important.
I'm going to chime in real quick. I think honesty is really important too. I mean, in merger
Yep.
acquisitions, there will likely be some layoffs. Just there's duplicate positions. And so I think honesty and transparency and giving people space to kind of mourn that loss if there are losses, and giving them time to acclimate is very, very important.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, Stephanie, because that's exactly where I was going with what Rohit was kind of describing. Was, Rohit, you describe you got to have confidence. You got to have your team's got to have confidence in you as their leader. How do you build that confidence? I think Stephanie's already kind of answered it with honesty, but within follow-on scenarios, how do you handle hard, honest conversations, if that makes any sense? To give an example, sometimes when I see whether it be a merger or acquisition, especially a merger or acquisition, is they'll make the acquisition happen and they'll sit in a holding pattern for 30, 60, 90 days, determining like, cool, we've got like two finance departments, two accounting departments, two HR departments, two these departments. So you don't need the duplication of all these different departments. Do you immediately like rip off that band-aid and go? Do you let them sit in purgatory for 30, 60, 90 days and kind of like everyone's like, dang, they've been here for a long time. Maybe they are going to stay. And what does my job look like moving forward? I don't know. Like, what is your strategy in terms of like where does honesty and speed of action kind of marry each other or come together when it comes to building trust and confidence?
Right. And this is really a touchy subject, you know, and it is you have to be transparent as you said, right? You need to be transparent, even though there are challenges and they are not always a good news. But you should give some time. It shouldn't be like immediate, okay, we have acquisition and then the layoffs or whatever, right? So make sure people they know what is there for them, right? They have a good transparent viewpoint shared by the management, and then give them some time, right? That should be like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever is the plan that works, and it's kind of a transition period that should really make the whole cycle seem easy for everyone. So that's in my experience that actually it works.
To me, I go back to, inviting others to the conversation, right? And having that open door policy for, as Stephanie said, for those employees or those team members to kind of mourn the idea that their role may be eliminated, or that they may have to shift to another department, or something like that. Again, when a merger or acquisition happens, there are likely going to be duplicate positions. So but for us as leaders, it opens our team up to trust us as leaders, because we have that open door policy, and we invite them to conversations, and listen to them with an empathetic ear, right? And it makes them feel that they are a part of the solution, where we're going, not where we've been. So also that's, what our team members want, that they want to be part of the solution, right? And that's part of our responsibility as leaders.
Okay, I'm going to make one more comment. So part of the merger and acquisition, you're going to have a due diligence period.
Mhm.
Sometimes decisions have to be made quickly. You maybe can't wait 90 days because that's a lot of payroll. You got to make a quick decision, or you may not know which finance team you want. There's hard decisions, and you don't know all the answers the moment you close that transaction. So I think during kind of that due diligence period, when you know you're going to merge, you're going to have to get your team, your department heads, your leaders together and kind of have these conversations like Tiffany was talking about. Be prepared to have those conversations with the team below you. Be prepared to talk about uncertainty. Be prepared for all these things, because the one person, the one leader, or the two or three leaders can't have all those conversations. They can't have all the answers on day one. So I think during that due diligence period, before the transaction actually occurs, have due diligence on the culture too, not just the transaction.
So I have a wild idea. I'd be curious to learn your thoughts on this. This idea stems from this situation that happened to me when I was younger, a lot younger. I'd gotten my first car and I needed to get my vehicle registration. My dad was like, "Oh, you're gonna go to the vehicle registration. It's gonna cost you around $600 to get your registration." Well, it only cost me $400. Still $400. But I was like, "Hell yeah, it was only $400. I thought it'd be $600. This is great." And the reason why I share this story is this is like a wild hair idea, and I'd be curious to learn your thoughts. Maybe you're like, Garrett, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard, but I'd be curious. I'm truly on the spot brainstorming with you right now. But what would you think if you went through a merger acquisition and like, hey, we're not going to keep two finance teams, we're not going to keep two HR teams, we're not going to keep two whatever other teams we may see. Going to the acquired team and say, hey, we're going to keep you on for the next 90 days. But in full transparency, we're not going to keep two HR teams, two finance teams, two this teams, two that teams. There are current open positions in our organization. As an internal employee, you get preferential treatment for roles because you're an internal hire. I would encourage you to get involved in those roles and opportunities. And there's a chance that something happens, but I would not put all my eggs in those baskets. And I just want to be very open and transparent with you about what the next steps are and what that might look like. And so, for sure, you're here for the next 90 days. After that 90-day period, I cannot make any guarantees because we are not going to keep two HR, two finance, two this, two that teams. What are your thoughts on that? Is that crazy to just be that open, honest, and transparent with like these newly acquired employees? Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people might think like, oh, people are going to freak out and immediately leave, and like maybe they do that, but I mean, they also have benefits and like they need to start, I don't know, making money for their families and stuff like that, and maybe it gives them that 90-day purgatory period to start looking for a new job. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that idea?
I think it's a great idea, to be quite honest. I think people like transparency, right? Especially like you said, they're preparing for, how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to eat, how they're going to feed their families, right? And some of them are even thinking about, what's next in their career. They may have been slated for, promotion. And now that this merger or acquisition is going to happen, that may be on hold or uncertain, right? And, I think giving people time, the honesty up front, I think they value that more than just sitting in limbo, wondering and waiting and having the anxiety and thinking about all these things. And, that puts extra stress and pressure on folks, right? So I feel like the honesty up front around, yeah, we're going to merge and, we're not going to keep two of these. So be prepared.
Right. I agree. I mean, honesty and transparency is very important, even if the news is not good. Uh, but the one challenge, Garrett, I would say that it is really hard for organization to
Read that on.
move employee from one role to another role. So because the skill set are mostly different. So it is, in theory, it looks good, but I did not see that often. So that's a challenge. I mean, you need to be very transparent, as Tiffany, you mentioned, right? But again, you need to do some kind of balancing act. Yeah.
I'll just add that you don't want a sense of cutthroat competition necessarily. I don't know that that's going to be great with different positions. So clearly outline what it is that you want in that position. So again, tying to our North Star, what do you want that position to be? What are the characteristics? What are the skills? So that people know what they're shooting for, not what they're going against.
Yeah, no, I like it. I mean, these are all really good points. But to your point, that open transparency, like the moment the acquisition happens, let them know. You can go to your own team and say, hey, finance team, y'all are good. Your roles are fine. We're not going to keep two finance departments. We're telling the newly acquired team, they've got 90 days. There might be some people we keep, but I want to set the expectation that, let's plan on your next step moving forward so then we can identify that, whether it be at a different role in this organization. It may not work out, to Rohit's point. But yeah, to your point, Stephanie, if you leave it open-ended and like don't tell anybody anything and then have a 90-day purgatory period, your current people are going to be freaked out, wondering like, oh my gosh, is this new team going to take me out? And your like integrated, your newly acquired team's gonna be thinking the same thing too. I mean, have any of y'all seen the TV show Severance? It's on
Mhm.
HBO. Stephanie, have you seen it? Rohit, have you
Few
seen it?
episodes, yeah.
It's an interesting TV show. It's a very fascinating concept, but it's about this company called Lumen, and when you go to work, there's this like thing implanted in your brain that like causes you to not remember anything in your personal life. And when you're at work, you're only at work. And when you're outside of work, you're only outside of work. And like you're severed. And so what's interesting is like at work, these people hate people from other departments. Like they're ready to fight each other. And I don't know, when I think of this competition, when I think of like a merged company, that's what I think of like people like, whoa, what you doing walking down my hallway? Like, what are you doing over here? Like, we only have room for one payroll associate, and that is me. I'm being silly and teasing right now, but I'm just thinking, how can we avoid that competitiveness or that I don't know, unhealthy rivalry between people who just don't know what their state is in the organization?
I guess that would be hard, especially when, again, you think about, what are the most important things to people, right? Family, money, and career. It probably should go in that order, but may not always. So that anxiety that kicks in will probably make people do things that they normally wouldn't do, right? So think about the human element of it.
Yeah. Right. Stephanie,
Right.
anything to add on
Yeah.
that?
So I would say like that's not a good situation to have having on a hallway, right? People are walking in and have like competing against each other. So try to avoid that situation as far as possible. Maybe involve your HR or the cultural team, like talk about different aspects, give positivity around it, and how it basically help organization. Uh, uh, so that's kind of a thing I would say. I mean, it's a challenge, but yeah, it is. So yeah, you'll have to navigate it through. So
And by the way, I tease. When I give examples, oftentimes I go way over the top just to kind of accentuate the point or just make a joke out of it. But I mean, truly, there are a lot of companies who go through M&A and they're just like leaving everybody open-ended for 90 days, sometimes longer, and then everybody's panicked and freaked out. There's a little bit of skittishness. You've totally breached psychological safety. There's no trust in the communication because they don't know whether or not their role is safe in the spot. And so if I'm thinking to myself, do I need to beef up my resume? That's unproductive time not helping me do better at my job. Um, but let's bring it down a level. So we've been talking about mergers and acquisitions this whole time. That's like the epitome of like business transformation. That's like the highest level of transformation that's going on. But the most common transformations are internal, more like little I transformations, things where it's like maybe we're going to try out a new software, or maybe we're going to try out a new ERP system or CRM system, or a new internal system that can make us more efficient. What do you do to get buy-in for that? Do you find it more effective to do company-wide rollouts? Do you find it more effective to find like tiger teams or like small pilot teams to try certain things out to see what the results you can get? What do you find to be effective when it comes to implementing what I like to call little I innovation ideas, where it's, you're not radically transforming the way the business operates, but making an incremental step to making the business more efficient?
right. So I would say from that side, making an incremental step that really helps in a way, because there are a lot of challenges, uncertainties when you are doing it. For example, if you said, okay, I want to bring Microsoft Copilot, right, for improving the testing efficiency. So you need to try that, and you need to have you need also involving your team early on and have an open feedback loop, right? Try to learn from them. So there are two ways of doing it. One is okay, my way or the highway, which is okay. This is how top down approach. This is what we need to do. The other is involving team, get their feedback, get their buy-in. Because that's very important. These are the people who know how the things work and they have really good ideas, so that helps. But going in an incremental fashion, right, following those agile methodology, which
Mhm.
is start small and build on top of it. So that's a good way of doing it.
Yep, I would agree. As somebody who's come into a company that's been around for 35 years, there are a lot of legacy systems. It's kind of like a Jenga block. You think it's easy and you're going to implement this thing, but you pull one block and the whole thing falls. So it's very, very important to listen to all the stakeholders involved because they know the processes, they know how everything is taped and pieced and glued together. So listening is really important.
Yeah, I agree with both of you all. I mean, most of the organizations that I've been a part of have been, people have been there for years. So I agree, you move one thing and it may cause, everyone to tumble. The system may not tumble, but people will, right? Because, they've not been so accepting to change, and change is just something that we as people are not always open to. So definitely having, small teams, running pilot sessions is a great avenue to take, especially with those teams that are uh, the change is going to affect mostly, and also bringing in other people from other, departments too. They may not understand what this change means or what this software means or this, different change mean, but it's definitely a good idea to have other perspectives.
Let's
Yeah.
make
And
it
check in frequently.
check in.
As you go through the process, and even if you're doing incrementally, check in. How's it going? How do you feel about it? What are the stumbling blocks that we're not looking at right now? Make sure you communication. I mean, everybody knows communication is key, so
Right.
do it throughout the process as well.
All right, let's do some story time. I like, I don't get me wrong, we're talking a lot about a lot of theory here, but I like stories. And Stephanie talk about, sometimes like a Jenga block, you pull out a piece that seemingly seems like a good piece to pull out. It's not, it's just like an appendage. You're like, why is this even here? And then the whole thing topples. You're like, that doesn't even, like gravitationally, it doesn't even make sense. Like, why would this fall? It's not even attached to the tower, seemingly. And then all of a sudden you realize there's like a thin layer that pulls out the whole rug from everything. So, um, do y'all have any stories of times where you pulled a perceptually, metaphorically, a perceptually unattached or unencumbering Jenga block, and you're like, uh-oh, I really stepped in it this time. I did not think people would be in an uproar over that. Like, I'll give an example. One of the leaders that I work with, he was sharing that his team got acquired, and his acquiring company said, you need to go from Slack to Teams. And his team literally had pitchforks and tiki torches ready to go to battle because they were not giving up their Slack. They're like, you cannot make us go to Teams. And like they ended up keeping Slack, and the company was not happy about it. But like, I just, it's one of those things where it's like, it's a communication, it's a chat platform, whether it be Teams or Slack, like, is there that big of a difference to his team? It was a very big difference. So anyways, I'd be curious to know, are there any times where you moved a Django block that you thought, no one's going to really notice this, and people absolutely noticed it?
I don't know that we've moved it yet, but something as simple as bank reconciliations seems so easy that we could just automate bank reconciliations. But because of the way it was set up many, many years ago, there's this dual account thing going on, and you have to work with the bank. It's a whole complicated thing. And so it's just not something that I can easily just pull and replace with something that I think is more efficient because there's so many other pieces involved. Now we can fix those other pieces, but you have to fix those other pieces first before you can move that Jenga block.
Yeah, that's funny.
But it's just those simple things that you think, of course, this is definitely doable, but it's much more complicated once you get into the details.
Yeah, no, good. That's a great example. Tiffany, Rohit?
Right. So what I noticed, like especially with the bigger organization, enterprise level, big companies, you have to be very careful when you are bringing this change, changing a software or, platform where you have those licensing or the cost benefits or whatever advantages that you have. I saw where things were not really thought through. The things did not go well. Initially, it looks really going well. So there are two things in that gets involved. One is that people like a team buy-in. People are not happy, right? The way that they used to work. Now the things are changing. So that's one thing. The other thing that really made the situation worse is that it was not implemented in a way that it should be, or uh, or there are a lot of issues which are coming in. Which is implemented, it went live, but the issues started coming in, and then there's a pause. So that kind of situation which I see during these mergers and acquisitions that happens, and this is I would say. I mean, the learning thing is, you need to get involved, and as you said, Garrett, like go with the incremental way of doing it, right? Start small, evolve, and then once it is thought through and it is implemented, just take it to across the organization. So yeah.
I may have one example I could share. Being a TA professional and having, worked at many different organizations, and I've seen, the TA process, or the recruiting process be handled in several different ways, right? And, there are times when you may have a process when there's, one interviewer or, panel interviews. And this one organization I was at, I recommended panel interviews to, make the process more efficient, speed up, the time that it takes to hire. And that recommendation was not very well received because that was not the way that they did, business in the past. And so, though I made the recommendation, showed the data that's, how it could make the process more efficient, it wasn't received very well. So I lost the battle. But, that was that organization. But, to me, I felt like that it was a great recommendation, but I realized that it wasn't going to be well received.
Yeah, no, good stories, everybody. Those were great. Rohit and Tiffany, you've all brought up this concept of incremental improvement over time. And I love that idea, by the way. I think that's a really great idea. I think that conceptually makes a ton of sense. How do you handle scenarios when you have seen results and you start to gradually increase the rollout of a new, let's say, ERP system, CRM system, new software tool, new whatever, new innovative way of doing a thing? How do you handle scenario when you get some people who tell you to your face like, oh yeah, boss, I'm on board, this is great, and then their results are starkly worse and like than anybody else, and you could see it because it's a technology. You can see their logins, you can see how often they're using it, you can see how much they're using, you see what their inputs are, you see what their outputs are, you could see the utility of it, and you notice that there's a handful of people who to your face are like, oh yeah, I'm so in, this is me, I'm all about change, boss, for sure. And then their results are widely, like, dramatically different in terms of application compared to other people. How do you handle those conversations? How do you handle those people?
That's a tough one. And one that I've experienced quite a bit, to be quite honest, especially when it comes to implementation of a new, ATS system. And, people are saying, yeah, this is going to help us be, more efficient. It's going to help the recruiting process. It's going to help my job, be easier. And then, there are some snags in, really adopting the system in the way that it operates, right? And again, they're accustomed to the way that the old system operated, right? Um, Receiving that data and realizing that your team isn't utilizing the system that, of course, costs tons of time and money and effort to implement is quite disappointing. But the conversation has to be had, right? And, all of the leaders involved have to be on the same page around, what this change means and how we go about ensuring that our team adopts this change, and that is going to be something that's long term because, we're not turning the system off because you don't want to use it, right? So, being honest about, what it means to use the system, how it's going to, improve our results and how it, in the long run is going to make, their job easier, right? And more efficient and effective. It's a hard conversation to have, but we have to let them know that we're all on the same team and that, they have to be on board.
And I think getting other influencers involved or champions or whatever word you want to use within the company. Sometimes if it's, the parent talking to the child, it's not as influential unless but you can have a friend and they'll have a lot more influence. So maybe like, peers or coworkers or others who really are grasping it or are doing a great job and they're finding all these different efficiencies and they're really excited about it, having them kind of influence that person as well is helpful.
Yeah, super user.
Right. And sometimes what happens, the team, they're not that transparent. They had a different perspective. They did not do their due diligence. And then they commit, right, to the management that this is done or this is going to work that way very efficiently. So in that case, I would say, I mean, you need to have that trust. But if you don't have that trust, if that person is a new team member or it's a new team, just spend some time, build that trust, and try to see like what's going uh, under the cover, right? Like how they are doing it, what they are doing it. So that can make the process more robust so that we don't have, end up like having these surprises at the end. So.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on just being objective with them? Just go to the employee and say, like, let's call this person John. Hey, John, I know when we talked about this new change, you're like, yeah, I'm on board and everything's great and all. I'm there could be something I'm missing here, but I'm looking at your average inputs or outputs, whatever, for this software tool that we're implementing, and I'm looking at the average user's outputs and inputs from it. And the average user is here, and you are here. Is there a chance that maybe I'm missing something, or there might not be something like that might be lost in translation? Or are there things that, maybe you're not telling me that I probably should know? Because ultimately, for us to get buy-in to this new technology, we all have to be willing to use it. And if, by the way, you've pushback or there are things that you need to share with me, I want to create a forum where we can do this, but I want you to know this is important to us because I'm able to see the inputs and the outputs on this. And right now, it looks like your input and output is far below the average user in our company. So I don't know, could you tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on this, or maybe if I'm missing anything, just maybe clarify that on my end. I don't know. What are your thoughts on approaching it pretty objectively and just kind of laying out the data of like, here's where an average user is, this is where you're at, and what might I be missing here?
So,
Yeah,
so
I
that,
think
yeah.
that kind of agrees with what Rohit was saying, is that understand what it is that they're doing, why they're doing it. They may say, oh yeah, I use this old system for this because it's a lot easier and this is how I've always done it. And so, or it's or maybe it is more efficient, who knows? So yeah, just understanding the why. So I think like we've talked about before, honesty and communication, I think always wins.
Right. And understand why there is a gap, right? Why an average user is saying this and your feedback or your inputs are, here. What is the difference? Why is this gap? And try to understand from them, right? Try to understand their perspective and see where the issue is. So that's another approach I would say that can work.
Yeah, leading with data is always important, I feel like, and I think once people see those numbers in their face, they can have that like aha moment and say, oh, okay, yeah, this is something that I need to work on. Or maybe again, finding out why they're not using the system. Maybe there's a technical issue. Maybe there's an issue with them understanding like, how to move from one step to the other. And then maybe we need to go back. This may be an opportunity for us to determine, do we need to go back to a training session to make sure everyone understands the system and how it operates?
Yeah, well, no, I like it, and I'm only, and I know we're at time here. My only devil's advocate concept to Rohit's point of like maybe, and Stephanie mentioned this, like maybe there's a more efficient way of doing it from the other system.
Mhm.
If that's coming from a C-suite executive, they have the power and control to say, you know what, that's interesting. Maybe we do need to adjust the way our systems work. But if it's a middle manager, they don't have that power to say, "Ooh, that's interesting. Maybe we do need to adjust our system, the way our systems work." They're like, "This is the way we're doing it, so you got to do it. So like, change the way you behave," and that ultimately can be a major trust breaker because now you're like, "Cool, I wasn't even heard. My middle manager, like, I guess heard, but steamrolled me anyways," and because they don't have any power to actually change the way that we operate as it is.
Yeah.
Any
In that,
thoughts on that?
yeah, like talk to the C-suite, right? For the middle manager, I think the best step would be go and talk to the C-suite. Like this is what our results are saying, right? This is what our team is saying, and it looks good. And this is the advantage that if we go with that route, what do you think about it? Right? So have like go with an open conversation and see what is their feedback, right? And maybe they have some other things that we don't know, right? And maybe the right approach. So that way, like build a bridge between these two, like between this kind of a communication gap, and see what the best next steps for us.
And what's funny about that example is like you're right, that would be a great way to do it. And if a C-suite person's open-minded in this scenario, that would be great too. But let's say that C-suite person, their dog ate some chocolate this morning, so they had to take him to the vet, which made them late to dropping their kid off at daycare, who their kid was puking everywhere. And so then the daycare said, "Hey, we're not taking your kid's sick, you're gonna have to figure out daycare for it." So you gotta call an emergency babysitter, you gotta go to pick up your mom across town. to bring her to your house to watch your kid because she doesn't have her driver's license, and now you're showing up to work at noon. Your fellow executive team's like, where the heck have you been all day? You're like, don't even tell me about it. And then some middle manager comes up to you and says, hey, should we potentially reconsider how we reconfigure the system? And you say, no, we've deliberated on this for forever. We are doing it this way. I'm not having this discussion again. And it's a little thing. Now, that middle manager has no idea what that C-suite executive has been doing all morning or what stressors they've been facing in their personal life. But that one little exchange where they flip their lid on that middle manager now immediately breaks the trust. So the middle manager's like, hey, we're not doing it. I don't even know why we're doing it. I got yelled at. I don't feel comfortable bringing up anything to my boss again. Like, discussion over.
Yeah, that's an interesting situation, you know.
Yeah.
And I would say for middle manager, try to find a time, right? We'll try to read between the lines and try to find a time when the C-suite manager is in, good mood, right? He is receptive or something. I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of.
Yeah. So I give that example as just I don't know. Such a
Yeah.
human thing, and it happens all the time. And we don't know the little things that are going on in other people's worlds. But then that one interaction that we have because we didn't have our game faces on or we're in the right headspace to handle it impacts the way that that person behaves with us for forever moving forward. And it's interesting.
Well, I go on the notion that, people are our greatest asset, right? And if we are leaders or are leading in that manner, we're going to lose a lot of people. So I think we all need to be a little careful about what our interactions are. No matter, I mean, we all face, challenges and, ups and downs in our personal lives and even in our professional lives. But, you know, having that type of reaction to someone, that's not cool.
And if you've worked with that person for any amount of time, they're going to know if you're an open, problem-led leader or you're going to just shut down every time. They're going to notice if that's just a one-off or not, I would assume, based on how you operate. And if that's, and as a leader, you may come back and apologize and open that door back up. So it's not a one and done, and then it's the middle manager's stuck forever. I don't.
Right.
If you create that culture of openness and acceptance of change and allowing failure, a lot of cultures and companies look down on failure. They don't accept it. So if you have a culture where failure is not an option, people are not going to come up with new ideas. They're not going to be innovative. They're not going to try. They're not going to be creative.
Right.
Well, this is great. Rohit, Stephanie, Tiffany, great pre-symposium panel. I think we covered a lot of ground during this meeting today. I really enjoyed it. If you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, I want to meet these three great leaders, come to our executive symposium next week, June 12th in Dallas. We're hosting the event at Roche-Beaubois. It's a high-end furniture store in the Design District. 5 to 8 p.m. I'll post in the link of this post where to RSVP. But anyways, Rohit, Stephanie, Tiffany, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your